The room fell into an eerie silence as Crockett placed the manila folder on the table. Everyone, including Abbott, knew something big was coming. She had the floor, and the momentum was entirely on her side. Crockett didn't hesitate. She opened the folder slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the moment. Then she pulled out the document everyone had been waiting for. Governor Abbott. She began calmly, her voice steady but sharp. This here is a confidential report, one that outlines not just the effects of your abortion laws, but their devastating impact on women, particularly women of color, in Texas. She held up the document for everyone to see, her eyes locking with Abbott's. The cameras clicked incessantly, capturing the moment in every possible angle. Abbott's face paled. He was trying to maintain composure, but it was clear the trap was set. He fumbled with his papers as if searching for something, anything, to regain control. Crockett didn't give him the chance. "You see, Governor," she continued, "this report from your own Department of State Health Services shows a 34% increase in maternal mortality since your restrictive abortion laws went into effect. That's not just a number, it's a reality for thousands of Texas women." The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some murmured among themselves while others sat in stunned silence. Abbott's supporters, once so confident, were now shifting in their seats, their pride deflated. He tried to respond, but Crockett was already moving forward. "And if that's not enough," Crockett added, her voice growing firmer, "this report also shows that black women in Texas are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy complications than white women. Are you proud of these numbers, Governor?" The room held its breath. The governor's face flushed red. His hands gripped the podium in a white-knuckled attempt to stay steady, but it was too late. He was losing control of the situation fast. Crockett didn't let up. "Let's talk about your so-called culture of support for mothers, Governor. This document shows that since your bounty hunter law went into effect, emergency room visits for pregnancy complications have increased by 67%. Are you aware of this?" Abbott opened his mouth to respond, but Crockett cut him off, her voice rising with intensity. "Governor, the broader context is that Texas women are dying because of your laws. Doctors are terrified of providing life-saving care because they fear being sued by vigilantes. And Texas women are left with a horrible choice, bankruptcy or basic health care. That's the real context, and it's on your watch." Her words hit hard. The audience could feel the tension building in the room. Abbott, once so confident and prepared, now looked visibly shaken. His carefully crafted political message was unraveling right in front of him. At that moment, he tried to regain his footing with another deflection, but it was clear it wasn't working. His voice faltered as he attempted to paint the statistics as out of context. But Crockett was relentless. "You know, Governor, your laws aren't just statistics," she shot back, grabbing the manila folder again. "They're lives. And this document here, the one marked confidential, shows exactly how your policies are causing irreparable harm to vulnerable Texans. This is the truth you've been trying to bury." With that, she held up the final document, revealing the smoking gun. A list of medical professionals and hospitals that had faced legal pressure and personal threats from vigilantes due to Abbott's laws. The room was once again dead silent. Abbott's face turned ashen as he realized the full scope of the evidence stacked against him. He had no more words to hide behind. The camera zoomed in on the 2 figures in the room. Abbott, now looking defeated and cornered, and Crockett, standing tall, poised, and unrelenting. The tables had turned, and everyone knew it. The room was electric with anticipation. Greg Abbott stood frozen, his posture crumbling as he faced Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who had just laid bare the devastating truth with the documents she had carefully prepared. His eyes fixed on the folder she held, and for the first time in years, the Texas governor looked genuinely rattled. This wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was a reckoning. Crockett, with the quiet confidence of a seasoned attorney, opened the folder with precise, deliberate movements. She wasn't just presenting evidence, she was about to dismantle Abbott's carefully constructed narrative piece by piece. "Governor Abbott," she began, her voice clear and commanding, "you've spent the last 20 minutes painting a picture of Texas as a state that supports mothers and protects life. But what I have in my hands is something that tells a very different story. These are internal communications from your office. Would you like to explain them, or should I read them for you? Abbott's face drained of color as he realized the gravity of the moment. He had no response, his usual composure shattered. For the first time in his long political career, Abbott was caught off guard. Crockett began reading from the first document. This email, dated August 15, 2021, from your Chief of Staff to your Policy Director reads, "The Governor is concerned about the optics of the maternal mortality increase we're projecting. Legal suggests we avoid any public statements linking the abortion restrictions to healthcare outcomes until after the midterms." A stunned silence gripped the room. Abbott's supporters in the front rows shifted uneasily, while his face flushed a deep shade of red. The weight of the words hung in the air, impossible to deny. "But it doesn't end there," Crockett continued, unrelenting. She pulled out another email, dated August 18th. "Hospital systems are warning about capacity issues and physician liability concerns. Should we delay implementation? And here's the response from your office. Governor says proceed as planned. We'll deal with the healthcare crisis after the political wins are secured." The room exploded with gasps. The cameras zoomed in on Abbott, who now looked utterly defeated. His carefully constructed image as a champion of life was crumbling before the world's eyes. "Governor," Crockett said, her voice cutting through the tension, "your staff warned you that women would die because of your policies, and you told them to proceed anyway for political convenience. How is that out of context?" The silence was deafening. The room was filled with a mix of shock, disbelief, and admiration for Crockett's fearless execution. Even Abbott's most loyal supporters were left speechless. But Crockett wasn't done. She reached for another stack of documents. "Since your laws went into effect, Governor, my office has received hundreds of stories from Texas women about the suffering your policies have caused. Let me share just a few with you." She held up the first photo, a young woman with a determined look in her eyes. "This is Maria Santos from Houston. She was 20 weeks pregnant when doctors discovered her baby had a fatal condition. Under your laws, she was forced to carry her child to term, enduring months of anguish. Because of your bounty hunter law, doctors were too afraid to help her. Maria had to watch her baby suffer for hours before dying in her arms. And she's here today in this room, Governor, to ask you why you think your political ambitions were more important than her family's agony." The impact was devastating. The emotional weight of Maria's story resonated with everyone in the room. Abbott's face turned ashen, his usual bravado completely gone. Crockett moved on to the next photo, this one of a teenager, barely out of childhood. "This is Sarah Williams from East Texas. She was raped by her stepfather and became pregnant. Under your laws, she couldn't get an abortion in Texas. Her family had to drive 800 miles to New Mexico to access care. They couldn't afford the travel or procedure, but they had no other choice. Sarah's mother is here today, Governor, and she wants to know why you think her daughter should have been forced to carry her rapist's child." The room was silent, save for the sound of Crockett's words cutting through the tension like a blade. Abbott's hands shook as he tried to regain control, but the damage was done. Crockett wasn't finished. She reached for one final document and placed it in front of Abbott. "And here, Governor, is a medical record from a Texas hospital. It's from October 2022. A woman experiencing a miscarriage, a natural, devastating miscarriage. But because of your laws, doctors were too afraid to provide the standard care she needed. She had to wait for legal approval while she bled. She nearly died before she could get the treatment she needed. Her name is Jennifer Abbott." "Yes, Governor, her last name is the same as yours." The room exploded. The implications were staggering. Abbott stood frozen, utterly speechless, his mouth opening and closing, but no words coming out. The cameras captured every moment of his humiliation as the truth of his actions hit him like a... For a long moment, Abbott remained frozen at the podium, unable to speak. His career, built on manipulating power and controlling the narrative, was crumbling before him. The committee chair tried to regain control of the meeting, but the damage was already done. As Abbott stood there, a shell of his former self, the gallery erupted in applause, the room filled with the sound of justice being served. In that moment, Jasmine Crockett proved that the truth, when wielded with precision and conviction, could bring even the most powerful men to their knees. Governor Abbott walked into the Texas state capitol. confident that nothing could challenge his political dominance. He had signed the most restrictive abortion laws in America, and he'd weathered every storm. But when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stood up with a folder full of documents no one knew existed, everything changed. What happened in the next 30 seconds would leave the Texas governor speechless and expose a truth that could destroy his political legacy forever. As the packed hearing room fell silent, Crockett opened that folder. Abbott's confident smirk quickly faded. His hands gripped the podium as he watched. Crockett pull out what would become his political demise, documents that would leave him with no choice but to apologize or face political destruction. Before we dive into this dramatic confrontation, hit that like button if you're ready to see one woman hold a political giant accountable, and don't forget to subscribe for more of these jaw-dropping political moments. This wasn't just about abortion rights. It was Crockett's moment to expose the true cost of Texas's brutal laws and show the nation who Governor Abbott really was when the cameras were rolling and there was no place to hide. The Texas state capitol was buzzing with anticipation on that crisp November morning. News crews filled the hallways. Protesters gathered outside with signs reading, "Protect women's rights and defend life." Inside Committee Room 2E20, the most important hearing of the year was about to begin. Crockett, sitting at the witness table in a sharp navy blue blazer, represented everything Abbott feared: a brilliant, unyielding black woman from Dallas who wasn't afraid to speak truth to power. At 42, the former defense attorney had already made waves in Congress. But today, she was on Abbott's home turf, armed with evidence that could change everything. Behind the podium, Abbott, 65, stood in his expensive suit, the picture of confidence. He had spent nearly a decade as Texas's governor, pushing policies to control women's bodies and silence dissent. He had signed Senate Bill 8, the most restrictive abortion law in modern American history, and had convinced millions of Texans that his laws were about protecting life. But Crockett wasn't just fighting for political points. She was fighting for her constituents, for her daughter's future, and for every woman whose voice had been silenced by men like Abbott. As Abbott gave his prepared speech about Texas's commitment to life, citing adoption services and maternal support programs, Crockett listened intently, making notes. Then, with a controlled, deliberate calm, she opened her folder and pulled out the first document. "Governor Abbott," she began, "I appreciate you mentioning your administration's support for pregnant mothers, but I have some questions about that support that I think the people of Texas deserve answers to." She held up a report from Texas's Department of State Health Services. "Can you tell us about the maternal mortality rate in Texas since your abortion restrictions went into effect?" Abbott's answer was quick but evasive, repeating his talking points. But Crockett wasn't finished. "According to this report from your own department, the maternal mortality rate in Texas has increased by 34% since your restrictions began." A murmur rippled through the room. Abbott's supporters shifted uncomfortably. But Crockett wasn't stopping. She pulled out another document. "This same report shows that black women in Texas are now 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than white women." "Are you proud of these numbers?" Abbott's face flushed as he realized this wasn't going as he'd planned. His confident political narrative was crumbling, piece by piece. "Governor," Crockett said, now holding another document, "let's talk about your so-called culture that supports mothers. This report from Texas hospital systems shows that since your bounty hunter law went into effect, emergency room visits for pregnancy complications have increased by 67%. Are you aware of this data?" Abbott tried to deflect, but Crockett wouldn't let him off the hook. "The broader context, Governor, is that Texas women are dying because of your laws. Doctors are afraid to help them because they might get sued by vigilantes. You've turned my state into a place where women have to choose between health care and bankruptcy." The room was electric with tension. Abbott's supporters were silent, and Crockett's allies began to cheer quietly as the evidence piled up. Then Crockett reached for a confidential folder that would change everything. She laid it on the table with authority. "Governor Abbott," she said, her voice steady, "let's talk about the whole story because I have documents here that will interest you very much." The room fell silent as Abbott's eyes locked onto the folder. For the first time, his confidence wavered. Crockett opened the folder and pulled out an email thread from August 2021, just weeks before SB 8 was signed into law. "This is an email from your Chief of Staff. Policy Director and Legal Counsel," Crockett said. Reading aloud, "The governor is concerned about the optics of the maternal mortality increase we're projecting. Legal suggests we avoid any public statements linking the abortion restrictions to healthcare outcomes until after the midterms." A gasp echoed in the room. Even Abbott's supporters looked stunned. "Here's another email from your policy director," Crockett continued. "Hospital systems are warning about capacity issues and physician liability concerns. Should we delay implementation?" And the response from your office? "Governor says proceed as planned. We'll deal with the healthcare crisis after the political wins are secured." Abbott's face turned pale as his carefully constructed image as a protector of life crumbled. For the first time, he was speechless. His hands shook as he gripped the podium. Crockett didn't wait for him to recover. "Governor, your own staff warned you that women would die, and you told them to proceed anyway because it was politically convenient. How is that out of context?" The room erupted. Pro-choice advocates cheered, and Abbott's supporters sat in stunned silence. But Crockett wasn't done. She reached for one final document and pulled out photos of two women whose lives had been destroyed by Abbott's laws. "This is Maria Santos from Houston," Crockett said, holding up a photo of a young woman. "She was 20 weeks pregnant when doctors discovered her baby had a fatal condition. Under your laws, she was forced to carry to term. Because of your bounty hunter law, doctors were too afraid to help her." Abbott's face went ashen as Crockett moved on to the next photo. "This is 16-year-old Sarah Williams, raped by her stepfather. She couldn't get an abortion in Texas and had to drive 800 miles to New Mexico. By now, Abbott's team was in full damage control mode, but Crockett wasn't stopping. "Governor Abbott, your laws are killing women and you've known it. You've prioritized politics over lives." As the room erupted in applause, Abbott's political career, once untouchable, lay in ruins. The DNC quickly seized on Jasmine Crockett's powerful performance, announcing plans to feature her in upcoming campaign ads. Recognizing that her takedown of Governor Greg Abbott could be pivotal in battleground states where abortion rights remained a hot-button issue, they knew her testimony was a game-changer. Conservative media outlets found themselves in an uncomfortable position. How could they defend Abbott when the damning evidence came from his own office? Fox News initially tried to downplay the situation, but as social media exploded with reactions, they were forced to cover it. They tried to divert attention by attacking Crockett's grandstanding and claiming the emails were leaked illegally, but even conservative commentators seemed uneasy defending Abbott. One Fox host admitted, "I support the governor's pro-life stance, but those emails are troubling. If your own staff warns about women dying and you proceed anyway, that's a problem." Political analysts immediately saw that Abbott's speechless moment would haunt him for the rest of his career. In Texas, projecting strength and control is everything, and Abbott had just been publicly stripped of both by a congresswoman from Dallas. One veteran Texas political consultant noted, "I've never seen anything like that. Abbott's whole brand was being the tough conservative who doesn't back down. After today, he looks weak and out of touch. That's political death in Texas." Early polling showed Abbott's approval rating plummeting, especially among suburban women, a key demographic crucial for his re-election. More alarmingly, the drop included Republican women who had previously supported his abortion restrictions. For Jasmine Crockett, the hearing transformed her from a rising star to a national political phenomenon almost overnight. Speaking invitations poured in from across the country, and Democratic organizations begged her to headline fundraisers and rallies. Her fundraising exploded as small-dollar donations flooded in from across the nation. A grassroots campaign to draft her for Senate began trending on social media, as supporters argued that Texas needed someone who could hold Abbott accountable. Late-night talk shows clamored to book her for appearances, recognizing that the woman who had made Abbott speechless was the kind of guest who would generate viral moments and massive ratings. Crockett's performance also galvanized reproductive rights activists nationwide. Planned Parenthood chapters saw a surge in volunteerism and donations, with many new volunteers citing the hearing as their motivation to get involved. Other Democratic politicians began calling for similar accountability from anti-choice governors in their states. Several announced plans to request internal communications on the health impacts of abortion restrictions. "Jasmine Crockett just showed us the blueprint for fighting back," said one prominent activist. "Come prepared, bring receipts, and make them face the human cost of their politics." As the dust settled, several major questions emerged that would shape Texas politics for years to come. Would Abbott modify his abortion laws in response to the devastating evidence? Would other Texas politicians distance themselves from his approach? And most importantly, could he survive politically after such a thorough public humiliation? Political insiders noted that Abbott's presidential ambitions, long a possibility, were probably dead after this hearing. No national candidate could survive the optics of being rendered speechless by evidence of their own callousness. Perhaps most significantly, Crockett's performance set a new standard for holding politicians accountable. Her use of internal documents, personal stories, and powerful evidence created a template that others would undoubtedly follow. "This wasn't just good political theater," said a political science professor at UT Austin. "It was a masterclass in effective oversight." Crockett proved that with the right preparation, anyone, even the most powerful politicians, could be held accountable for their actions. As the news continued to spread, one image dominated the airwaves. Greg Abbott, speechless and defeated, realizing his carefully constructed political narrative had unraveled in the face of truth. For millions watching, this moment symbolized something larger than just one politician's downfall. It was the realization that women's voices could still break through the noise, that evidence still mattered, and that even the most powerful men could be held accountable for the suffering they caused. Jasmine Crockett entered that hearing room as a rising political star. She left it as a national hero who showed that courage, preparation, and truth could make the powerful answer for their actions. Greg Abbott, on the other hand, left knowing that his political legacy would forever include 30 seconds of speechless shame, broadcast live for the world to see. If this story of political accountability and women's power inspired you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss these incredible moments when truth meets power. In American politics today, it's prepared, passionate voices like Jasmine Crockett that are changing the game, and we'll be here to cover every devastating moment when justice finally arrives. The question now isn't whether Greg Abbott will recover from this political disaster, it's who Jasmine Crockett will hold accountable next. And trust us, you don't want to miss that showdown.